Tashidale, and welcome to the AWAM Tibetan Buddhist Institute. And today our Heart Essence of Tibetan Buddhism class. We are on number 15. Hard to believe, but we are. And so let's begin taking a few deep breaths and then back out. Just relax, calm your mind. We'll do a short refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. So we are in chapter 13 and the second training on the path of tantra, which is meditation, broadly speaking, but that's what most of this class is all about, is meditation in different forms, different levels, and so forth. And so here now we are beginning to focus on the outer yidam yogas. And so these are really the main tantras that are part of our practice, particularly in Asia and so forth. This is what they primarily focus on. More advanced people will get into later with the inner tantras. But this is the most popular form of these, and even the most popular in most cases here in the United States as well. So this has a unique power of tantra to transform you into a Buddha. So that's the basic underlying aspect of what we're doing here. One of the key psychological techniques employed here is acting as if you are already a Buddha. You might call it role play, a term that I use a lot of times for this. We are basically rehearsing in order to be an actual Buddha. So we may make mistakes, but just imagine that you are already a Buddha. So you just visualize yourself as being in that state, that condition, and then do your best to do what you think that Buddha would do as you go about your day. So what would Buddha do in this circumstance? What would Buddha do in that circumstance? And so forth. So this also requires you to continue to study to better understand what a Buddha would do in the wide variety of circumstances that occur daily. And so Tantra practices fall into two main categories, which I was alluding to, the outer and inner yogas. So the general outer tantras involve visualization of the yidam outside of us. So that's the reason it's referred to as being outer. They tend to be individual and peaceful yidam forms, dressed in royal garb and seated on a moon disk, is the term. So you usually have a lotus and then a disk on top of that. So that's the moon seat. The inner tantras involve visualization of ourselves as the yidam. So we are, instead of visualizing one out in front of us or someplace, we become the actual yidam. And these tend to involve a wrathful yidam in sexual union with a consort, naked or wearing bone ornaments and or animal skins, and usually standing on a sun and a moon disk. So now we have two disks. We have a moon disk, a white one, and usually the yellow one, the sun disk, is on top of that. So they're usually in a standing posture as opposed to being seated. They often are articulated as being a male and female together. That doesn't mean that that's the actual practice, although some people do those actual practices. The idea here is the masculine principle and the feminine principle. So the masculine principle has to do with things, the way that we look at ordinary practices, how we do that, loving kindness, compassion, those kind of things. Whereas the feminine is more of the wisdom or insight aspect. And so that they are articulated as masculine and feminine. And so in some cases, there are single wrathful females as well, rather than a male or a female. Sometimes, occasionally, there's also a male who is without a consort. And so in the females, one of the things that is typical in the image is that they're holding a staff or a katvanga. And that symbolizes that she still has a consort, even though the consort is not visualized. And then the outer yidam yogas are sometimes described as having 3 different categories, although these have largely been merged or focused on the latter in Tibetan Buddhism these days. We don't really divide it into those 3 very often. And so the first one is related to performance, that's called kriya, action, which is upa, and then yoga tantras. So those are the 3 general categories. Performance tantra focuses on perfection of karma, our body, speech, and mind. It's absolute and relative truths related to that, but also separate. And then yidam visualization, a yidam as a lord or a Buddha, and yourself as a servant as a part of that. That's one of the images that is articulated as a way to understand that. Action Tantra is essentially the same, but the yidam is understood as a friend or helper. So the way that it's understood is slightly different. And then Yoga Tantra focuses on the absolute truth as non-conceptual, empty, and luminous. And then the relative truth as the mandala of yidams and visualization of self as a yidam and actualization of yidam or pure, divine or pure, and then body, speech, and mind, and action. So all of those are visualized as being pure already. So some common examples of the outer yidam yogas include things like Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, and Vajrasattva, which practice we have already been doing for purification of our body, speech, and mind. Green and white taras, and those are very popular, among the most popular of these images. Avalokiteshvara, or Chinrezig, is another one, the Buddha of compassion, although both green and white Tara are heavily related to compassion as well. And then medicine Buddha, Amitabha is often included in those. Manjushri is another one, and so forth. So I'll give you some of the more popular and well-known versions of this class of yidams. So some yidam practices do not easily fit into various categories because the categories themselves were developed by or after the yidam practices. So we already had a complex array of these before they started labeling them in that way. As a result of that, not everything really fits perfectly in the categories as described, but they're close. So for example, some semi-wrathful yidam practices have elements of both inner and outer categories. In the practices included in this chapter, for example, we will visualize ourselves as the actual yidam. So that's one of the techniques, either in the end or throughout the practice. And then this is a step on the way to becoming a Buddha. One of the reasons the path of Tantra is considered to be more effective than the more abstract practices of the paths of individual liberation and altruism, in that we can achieve liberation in this lifetime. So that's one of the significant differences in the practices of this kind. It is said to be a quicker way, and the path of individual liberation oftentimes is described to take centuries or even complete changes of the universe and so forth. So this is oftentimes considered in less time. Of course, if we look carefully, the Buddha himself gave examples and even taught some people that are documented in stories in very short times, even a day or two. So it can be done in a very short time, according to the Buddha himself, and also in Tantra. So Padmasambhava only touches on the practice of the yidam yoga as such. He doesn't go into a great deal of detail on this. The previous Vajrasattva practice was one example of yidam yoga, but the focus was on purification in that case, not the practice of yidam yoga as described here. So Padmasambhava then goes on to include one additional reference with little explanation. You are given the option of choosing one practice. So we're going to have several options here that you can choose, and we'll talk about each of them today. I have adopted 3 additional short practices from which you may choose one or continue with one after the other over a longer period of time. So you can just pick one and that's your one for the practice for the week, or you can actually just do a different one each day during the week. So keep in mind that these are a form of shamatha, single-pointed calm abiding, with a more complex level of visualization that is intended to expedite the process of liberation. It also incorporates visualizing yourself as the yidam. So we begin seeing ourselves as being an actual form of a Buddha. A very powerful psychological practice used by world-class athletes, dancers, and many others to enhance their performance. As noted above, if you act as if you are a Buddha, even off of the cushion. Okay, so even when you get up, finished doing your formal meditation, you continue thinking about yourself as being that particular yidam that you've been practicing. So first, following Padmasambhava, you follow a stepwise development of your shamatha practice, leading to the yidam practice. Yidams are imagined figures or Buddhas that help you to develop your single-pointed calm abiding, the generation stage practice. And wisdom, the completion stage practice, by seeing yourself as the yidam. But please don't go around claiming, I am this yidam. Anybody who would do that is not, of course. So first, you will practice with a focus on an imaginary object, similar to what we have done with shamatha previously. Then you will move to a visualizing yourself as a hollow body with an imaginary object at your heart. So going from a regular body to a hollow body, where it's like your skin is all that really exists and everything inside is hollow. And so we are going to integrate these either as parts of one practice or a sequence of which the practices, which are numbers 21 through 23, and your choice in the last one there of 4 different options. So you're going to have some choices to make here. Or you can try a different one every day. So you can either pick one and that's your practice for the week, or you can try all of them, a different one each day. So we begin this with shamatha of eyebrow bindu, described by Padmasambhava. In this practice, you change your focus to a small orb of white light, the size of a pea, called a bindu or tigli. It's almost like a little flame of light that is at your heart level. It is imagined as being between your eyebrows, in this case, so it starts up here. You have moved from a physical object in the last shamatha practice to an imagined one. As before, if thoughts or other distractions arise, let them go and refocus on the white light. Either do several short meditations in each session or the full sequence mentioned above. For example, you might do 4 to 6 5-minute meditations with a short pause between. Sorry, no coffee breaks in that case. You could do coffee breaks and then do another session of those. Okay, so practice twice daily. Again, we set our intention, we recite a brief nundro, and then the shamatha with signs here, or the eyebrow bindu. We take a few deep breaths, as we've been learning to do, then begin with stillness of body, speech, and mind. I find it helpful to do those one at a time, and when you're thinking about that, kind of like doing Vajrasattva purification, you start at the head, and then you go down through the body, and then you go through your mind. So then visualize a small white light between your eyebrows as long as you can, and then finally gently release the visualization and settle into the natural state without thoughts. And then we repeat that several times, 4 to 6 times. And then at the end of that, we do the dedication, unless we're going to go ahead and continue the practice with the next one. You can see this is a very short kind of a practice, and you can easily go through it several times in a short period of time. So if we're continuing on to one of the other ones, then we don't necessarily do the dedication at that point. And so in post-meditation, or if you wait till end of these practices, you arise gently, leading your life in a meditative fashion as before. It is very important to begin developing on an ongoing sense of a deep inner peace. So that is one of the key expressions that we are looking at to try and help us give something to identify with as we go through these practices. The Buddha used the word peace in many different ways and over and over and over again. So a very important aspect to be aware of and to look for or experience as a part of your practice. So next then we go on to shamatha with a hollow body. So before we had the light in our forehead, but we didn't really talk about what was inside of our body. So having moved from a physical body to an imagined object, the next step is a more complex visualization. Here you imagine that your body is hollow. It's like a balloon, and the only thing that is actually there is like on the surface of your skin. It's like a transparent balloon. Inside at your heart is a small blue, or some say red, but traditional here with Padmasambhava was a blue one, light. And then about the size of a pea, so fairly small. And then it is clear and hot. The light radiates out, filling your body with blue light, or red if you're using a red light. This helps prepare you for the tantric yidam yogas, in which we imagine being a transparent Buddha. Now, for those of you who are here at the back of the room, you can see a transparent Buddha there on the table, so that gives you a sense of the idea of this. If thoughts or other distractions come during your practice, let them go and return your focus to the blue light. Do several short quality meditations in each session. So the practice itself, twice daily, again, we set our intention. We don't need to renew the nundro if we are doing it all in one session. And the practice itself is shamatha with signs, or hollow body. Begin with the stillness of body, speech, and mind. Then your body as completely hollow, like the balloon. At your heart center is a clear, hot blue light. Visualize without distractions for as long as you can. Then gently release the visualization and settle into the natural state without thoughts. So you can see how similar this is to the previous one. A light at the forehead, here it's a light in our body, a blue light in our body. And then again, if we're doing this, do the dedication. So you can see you can put those two practices together very easily. You do the first one and then go ahead and do the second one. And then if you're stopping, do the dedication. But if you're not, then go ahead for post-meditation. Again, if you're stopping or not stopping, this would change. You would cultivate enthusiasm and delight, according to Padmasambhava, which will help a single-pointed calm abiding arise in the mind stream. The last instruction points to an important point in the practice of meditation that I have noted previously. Meditation should be fun. Sometimes people take it just way too seriously, but it needs to feel good. It needs to make you feel happy, because that's part of what we're trying to ultimately accomplish as a part of this. Not some sense of ordinary play per se, but more a sense of peaceful happiness. And that's one of the reasons I like that sense of peace. And I use that word a lot. The Buddha used that word a lot as well. Remember, you are after innate happiness, peace, and contentment. It is easy to become too serious about this. So taking it seriously is one thing. Being serious is another altogether. All right, so now we continue on with the shamatha with a yidam, a Buddha form. So we have those two variations of shamatha compared to what we have done previously, but they're very suitable as preparation in two stages leading up to what we're looking at in this next practice, hence the reason that I put them together as a possible set of practices. So you move to the more complex practice of visualizing a simple yidam. You begin the practice by being a Buddha. So you imagine, okay, I am a Buddha, and that's an important principle within Tantra. You visualize and really believe you are, in essence, a Buddha. Kind of a fake it till you make it proposition. So you use the power of visualization as a part of this. Visualization is well known in psychology to have a great deal of power in helping us. And when the chocolate runs out, Lama Yeshe gives us the following advice for visualizing a role play. Using visualizations can be a powerful form of meditation, but don't imagine visualizations are something new and foreign that you do not have experience with. In reality, you visualize all day long. The breakfast you eat in the morning is a visualization. In an important way, it is a kind of projection of your mind. You are visualizing that your breakfast has some kind of independent existence. Similarly, when you go to shopping and think, this is nice, or I don't like that, whatever you're looking at is a projection of your own mind. When you get up off in the morning and you see the sun shining and think, oh, it's going to be nice today, that's your own mind visualizing. Visualization is not something supernatural, it is scientific. So the challenge is to harness that already well-developed skill and make it into something wholesome and useful. I think that's really an excellent quote from him to refer to how this fits into the practice, because we kind of imagine it as something totally different, but it's really not. It's very common. And so then we have the different practices within that, of the yidam practices. So the first one is with Vajrasattva. Well, we already did Vajrasattva, but here we're just doing it in a slightly different way. So previously, In the preliminary practice, we focused on purification Vajrasattva. So we imagined him and the liquid coming down through our body and wiping away all of those conflicting things that are harmful to us and our practices. So here we return to the previous practice of Vajrasattva, that was number 18. But the focus now is on a detailed image of Vajrasattva. Before he was just there, we didn't really talk about him. Building further on the complexity of the last practice. So recite the practice quietly but out loud, visualizing or imagining represents the Buddha's body. Recitation represents the Buddha's speech. So that's another characteristic we see when we start doing tantra. So the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. All three of those will be a part of many of the practices. So it's very helpful here to find an image of Vajrasattva on internet or purchase a card or a Thangka painting with this image. And so that's an important image to familiarize yourself with. And so you can get those things that are easily available online. You can print one out if that's helpful. It's important at this level to see all of the details, although images will differ in some ways. So begin by memorizing his face. We start with the face, so we get an idea of what that looks like, and then the adornment on his head. Then move slowly down until you can easily see all of the details in your mind without looking at the picture. So the idea is to get to the point where you can recognize it. And my guideline rule for this is you take a set of images and you know which one is Vajrasattva. You always know, even though there are variations, it's easy to know, okay, this is Vajrasattva. He always looks like this, more or less. So that's the important level of detail that is, I think, important here, the critical part. So one of the most common ways to do this is to look at an image for some time, focusing on one feature, then closing your eyes and then recalling it in as much detail as you can. And then finally opening your eyes to verify how accurate that you were. So you look, close your eyes, and reopen your eyes and say, okay, did I get it right? So we repeat this over and over until you can sustain the image. And this is basically true for all of the Tantra practices. And then we repeat this over and over until you can sustain the image for the duration of your session. If this is too difficult, I've had students who just said, I'm not visual, I can't visualize these things. So not everybody can do it very easily. So in that case, continue to look at the picture or use what's referred to as a flash visualization by just looking briefly at the picture and then moving on. So a number of teachers refer to this idea of a flash visualization. So having the image that you can glance at, and so you just glance at it and then you close your eyes or wherever you're looking, and that will be sufficient. So don't let this be a barrier if you have trouble visualizing things. So these visualizations include images of one or more Tibetan syllables as well. And there are different examples. Come back to this one, but this is a sample of what they may look like. That's the Hri syllable. And so you can also find those on the internet. If you have a written version of one, you can go on the internet, put it in, look under images, and it's easy to find those. So then you memorize them or simply use the English translation of that. So the actual image like this, memorize what that image is, or just the word Hri. Okay? Either one will work just fine. And so
During the meditation, if thoughts or other distractions arise, which is a fairly common kind of thing, particularly in the beginning, just let them go and return your focus to Vajrasattva and do several short quality meditations as a part of that. One special note on here, it's in a footnote in the book, I found that it can be helpful to think of relaxing your brain when distractions arise. So when distractions come up, and you start thinking about this or start thinking about that, just go back in, just relax your brain, your mind, okay? And refocus your attention on the yidam. So just a suggestion there. So the practice here, again, Vajrasattva, so the shamatha with Vajrasattva. So we use practice number 18, so you would want to go back to that and look at it. And then Padmasambhava here lists alternatives to Vajrasattva as options as well. For this practice, it may be helpful to try different alternatives to find the one that you best identify with for this visualization practice. And so I have also included 3 alternatives here in the book for you. Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, Avalokiteshvara, Chinrezi, also a very popular one, and Green Tara. So they have at least one female as a part of the options here. So Shakyamuni Buddha here then is, the text is included. And so this starts the same as before. So if you're doing this independently, then go back and include the initial parts with the refuge and so forth. But if you're doing it as a part of a sequence, which is the way I've arranged it here, is the visualization begins with a stillness of body, speech, and mind. So we take a deep breath, let it go down. So you find yourself in a very nice, calm state. And then from emptiness and compassion, the syllable hung, in this case, appears and radiates and absorbs golden light. You appear as Shakyamuni Buddha, sitting in the Vajra posture, that's your legs crossed, and touching the ground with his right fingers and radiating 5-colored light in all directions. So typically the images of Padmasambhava, he's reaching down and touching the ground with his fingers, which is part of a story about him dealing with Mara, the demon, trying to get him to let go of his liberation, which he, of course, didn't do. And so then with 3 syllables, Om Ahung, in the 3 places, that's your forehead, your throat, and your heart. So Om Ahung, light radiates, emanates out from the seed syllable Hung, which is at the heart. And then inviting the wisdom beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha. Now this in tantric practice is very common. Doesn't always happen, but in general, whatever the yidam is that you're using for the practice, all of the Buddhas come in that particular form. And so they can change. They can be Shakyamuni, they can be Vajrasattva, they can be Tara, and so forth. And so you'll oftentimes, but not always, find this in texts that we use. And so they dissolve inseparably into myself. So they come, they're around us, and then they dissolve into us. And you are then empowered by the yidam. So that's a form of empowerment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. You offer a cloud of offerings to yourself as all the yidams. Okay? So they're already here in you, and so you visualize that as coming into you to them. In the expanse of pure awareness, you praise the display of all the appearances of mind of the yidam yourself. Okay? Again, no difference between the two. Around the home, on a moon disk at your heart, and that's that cylinder, the moon means white, and the mantra circles clockwise. Okay, so the disc itself doesn't move, but the mantra is standing up around the outside edge of that, just above the outside edge. And so the mantra is going clockwise around in front of you. And then radiating offerings to the Buddhas and absorbing blessings that purify the two obscurations of all beings. Those are afflictive emotions and mental obscurations. There are many, many lists of different kinds of obscurations, but in Tantra in particular, they've kind of summarized it down into those general categories instead of longer lists. So then we have the appearance and existence becomes the spontaneous radiant display of the three vajras. So those are then radiating out as a part of that. And as a part, we recite the mantra. So as you can see, these practices start off with a visualization. And it may include some other interactions with other Buddhas and so forth. Sometimes there are prayers and other kinds of actions. And then you go to the mantra. And so the mantra here is Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Ye Soha. And so then we recite that. Classically, we would do it 108 times, one mala. But you can do it less if you don't have time, or you can do multiple malas if you do have time and so forth. But always visualizing yourself in that position. And then when you've completed that part, the next stage is to dissolve the visualization. So first we create the visualization, although there may be some other things involved there too. Then we recite the mantra, that's the second main part. And then the third one is to dissolve the visualization. And so the visualization in this case, Shakyamuni Buddha, and the mantra in the heart itself, it also dissolves into emptiness. Now, sometimes it's more complex than that. We'll get into some of those as we go on later. And then we rest in the natural state of peace for as long as you can. So that's the meditation aspect. And then when you're finished with that, then you recite first Hri. And that's that image that I've been showing you here. In this case, it was talking about a white one. So I brought a white one too, that you could see here. This is a little bit bigger. So you can find them in different ways, different colors, and different situations. So we recite Hri. I offer the ocean of offering clouds, actual and imagined. I praise the yidams of the all-expansive purity of samsara and nirvana. Forgive me for any faults, errors, or wrongs I have done. Accept my apology and bestow the city of purity. And then we do the dedication, unless we're going on. Okay, so if we're going on, then we don't do that at this point in time. Same thing with the post-meditation. If we're stopping here, we do both the dedication and the post-meditation. But if we're not, then we just continue on to the next practice. The next one that I've included here is Chinrezi. We're familiar with Chinrezi as well, Buddha of great compassion. So we start off doing that unless we've already done it, but if we're doing it in sequence, as I'm describing here, then we don't have to do the refuge and so forth. We go directly to the visualization. Begin with the stillness of body, speech, and mind, once again. From the emptiness sitting on a lotus and a moon disk, I am Chinrezi, white in color with 4 arms. So again, we're visualizing ourselves in the form of Chinrezi, white in color, and we have 4 arms. Now that's when usually we see multiple arms and so forth in more wrathful forms. But this is one where it's fairly common. And then my upper 2 arms are joined, the heart holding the wish-fulfilling gem. My lower right hand holds a crystal mala, and the lower left hand holds the stem of a white lotus flower. I wear sacred silken robes and the precious 5-pointed crown and other ornaments, keeping it simple. Okay? So sometimes they'll list out all of the different ornaments that are included there. And it's also unusual for him to actually have 4 arms as a part of that. The more common, he only has 2. In my heart is a moon disk with a white tree. So here's the white tree, standing in the center, surrounded by the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. So this is his mantra, facing outward and circling clockwise. Light radiates from the mantra, and I offer it to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Buddha field. So now they are out there surrounded. So when we refer to it as a Buddha field, they haven't entered inside of us, but they have surrounded us. They send blessings of wisdom and compassion in the form of light that fill me and purify all obscurations of my body, speech, and mind. Fully purified, I become embodiment of the wisdom and compassion of all the Buddhas. All Buddhas are considered to be the same. They may look different from each other. They may have different areas of specialization in their actions and so forth, but they are actually considered to be all the same. Again, light radiates from my heart mantra, pervading the entire universe and transforming it into a pure land. Now, that's another term that we often use. And so the Buddhas are said to have pure lands. Some of them in the tradition have been named, and they're specific, and they are considered to be something that where we would go generally when we die. And there's a process that we go through to eject our consciousness into the Pure Land, this being one of the more common ones. And we go there so that we no longer have any suffering to deal with, but we're not fully liberated yet. And so we go there and we continue our process in a safer environment in order to become a fully realized Buddha. Again, light radiates from my heart mantra, pervading the entire universe and transforming it into a pure land. So these pure lands are considered to be the entire universe. How can we have multiple pure lands if each is the entire universe? Well, it's a flexible kind of thing. We can visualize these things in different ways. And so when you're looking at this, just go with the flow, so to speak, of the way that it is described as a part of that. And so then, as the light touches all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, all of their suffering and ignorance are dispelled and they are transformed into Chinrezi. Okay, so that's the advantage of going there. But here we're doing it as if he's coming to us and doing it with us. And so then we recite the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and we continue doing that as we visualize him reciting the mantra. And again, traditionally we do it 108 times, but it can be 7 times or 21 times or whatever time that you have available. All the outer and inner phenomena dissolve into light and are absorbed into me. So again, the dissolution of everything. I dissolve into the free, which dissolves into the all-pervading emptiness. So into this natural state of peace. And we stay there as long as we can. Again, I appear as Chinrezi, the embodiment of the wisdom and compassion of all of the Buddhas. And then we recite, by the merit of this practice, may all sentient beings attain liberation. And the post-meditation, we continue that if we're doing that, but if not, we have one more option available that we can do. All of these are very short, so it's very easy to do this in a relatively short practice in the morning and in the evening. And so we do, if we're starting, we do the practice, intention, and nindra. The actual practice then with the visualization, we begin with the stillness of body, speech, and mind. From the emptiness appears the syllable pam, which transformed into a lotus seat. On the top of this appears a syllable ah, which transforms into a moon seat on which my mind appears in the form of the green syllable tam. So we have a bunch of different variations here. And note the symbolism that is involved with each of those. It's important to be aware of those. From this, the green tam, rays of light radiate as offerings to all the Aryas. The Aryas means noble ones who have directly realized the truth of emptiness for the benefit of all sentient beings. In other words, they are a form of a Buddha. The light then reabsorbs into myself and I become Tara. My body is green and I have one face and two hands. My right hand rests on my right knee in the giving mudra. That's the hand going outward here. A little hard for me to do there. You can see it, but it's out, the palm facing outward and down. That's the giving mudra. My left hand is at my heart, holding the stem of a blue cauliflower, which is a form of a lotus. And so the thumb and finger are pushed together at the heart. You can't see. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit here. At the heart. And so we're holding the stem. The actual lotus itself is over at the side. I am peaceful and gently smiling. I am adorned with precious ornaments and garments similar to royalty. So the way that these figures in peaceful form are described, it is basically a form of the way royalty traditionally in India would wear, and jewels and other kind of things as well. And so then my right foot is slightly extended. There is a green Tara over here. You can see that hers, instead of completely folded, her right foot is just leading out a little bit. And the thing behind that is that she's ready. She's ready to get out to help and practice. So my right foot is slightly extended, ready to step into action. And my left is tucked in. My back rests against a moon disk, which is white. And so there's a white circle around behind. Sometimes they're different colors, but here it says it's white. On my forehead is a white Om. And this we saw before, Om, and then a red Ah at the throat, and a blue Hong at the heart. Body, speech, and mind. From the Hong, light rays radiate and invoke all the Tathagatas, the Buddhas, from the 10 directions, so that's all directions, the 4 cardinal directions, 4 intermediate directions, up and down, so that's a way of describing every direction, in the form of green Tara. So similar to what we talked about before, they're all transformed into the same version as we are practicing. So this is a common representation of the central Buddha. These wisdom beings absorb into me again from the seed syllable, my heart. Light rays are extended and invoke the Dhyani Buddhas. These are the 5 Buddha families. Later in the course, we'll go into those. Please, all Tathagatas, bestow all empowerment on me. So we're requesting that they send their empowerments to us. And then usually in these forms, the peaceful ones, they are usually the vase or body empowerment. And there are 3 others in the usual, because there's 4 standard ones, but there are also in advanced practices many. I went through a series in one case of over 25 some practices and empowerments. And then the Tathagatas pour water from the vessel on top of my head. Pour it on top, just like what we do with a little bit like Vajrasattva. And then the Amitabha appears on top of my head. So he's the Buddha of infinite light to save beings from suffering. So he appears up here. My heart on the moon seat, topping a lotus flower, there is a green letter tam, surrounded by the syllables Om Ta Re Tu Ta Re Tu Re So Ha. Okay? So each of those syllables are organized around that. And there's an image in the text of that. So they are upright around the edge of the moon seat, just above, not touching. From the syllables, rays of light extend offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The blessings and compassion of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas manifest in the form of rays of light, which absorb into the circle of seed syllables. Now, we had them. They arrived with us, and then, as they do in some cases, they came into us. And so when it's radiating out from our heart into them, already in it, inside of us, as a part of that. And so then we recite the mantra. So we did the visualization, now the mantra. Om tare tu tare ture soha. Okay, and again, we would do this 108 times or however many that you can, as the light rays emanate from the tam and mantra syllables, purifying all and performing activities of compassion. So the Tara is in the center of that circle. And so it's sitting there and radiating out these rays of light. And that's a fairly common representation too. So that's oftentimes referred to as the seed syllable of that yidam or deity. And then we dissolve the visualization. So we already did the mantra. So we dissolve the visualization and rest in the natural state for peace as long as you can. So that's the meditation part of this. That's the most important one, actually. So we want to do that as much as we can. And then the closing prayer. This one has a little longer closing prayer than some of the others. Om, homage to the lady who protects us from the 8 fears. There are 2 sets of 8 fears, and the first list, I'll give you an idea of what they are: water, lions, fire, snakes, elephants, thieves, and false imprisonment, as well as ghosts. So those are things that are fairly classical in ancient India. Okay? They did have snakes, they did have lions, and so forth. But there's another list of those that I don't have here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, that are outer, inner, and secret meanings of each of these. And so these are also not just literal things, but they are also symbols of something else. Okay? So the homage to the lady who blazes with the splendor of auspiciousness, so success, liberation. Homage to the lady who closes the door to lower rebirths. Homage to the lady who leads us on the path to higher realms. You have always sustained me in your care, and now protect me with your great compassion, I pray. So that's a nice little verse to throw in there at the end of this. So then we recite, by this merit may I quickly reach the enlightened state of green Aryatara. Arya means noble one. So that I may lead all living beings without exception to the same liberation. So not only do we want it for ourselves, we want it so that we can help all sentient beings attain liberation. Okay. So, okay, I got just a little bit here more that I can get in. We're about ready to close this off. So Pabasambhava told his consort Yeshitso Gyal, when he is said to have been in Tibet, to practice 3 or 4 sessions each day, including 10,000 recitations of the mantra each day, and again each night. So that's kind of what we are been doing. Or do at least 1,000 each, or 500 each, or 100 each. There's your mala, 108, okay? The latter, 1 mala each, is easily done by Western lay practitioners, do more if you can. In the tradition, this is considered an accumulation of merit. So as we do that, we're accumulating merit from doing these practices. Even more importantly, however, is that it is a way of habituating your mind, training our mind. And mind training is one of the most important principles of these practices. And we train our mind in the Dharma. As an informal daily practice, many Tibetans regularly recite mantras throughout the day. It is not necessary to use a mala or other counter unless, of course, you are trying to accumulate a specific number of samaya vow, for example, for your lama or for yourself. Use whatever mantra is part of your daily yidam practice and visualize the yidam as you recite the mantra. Or you can use a universal mantra. Om Ah Hong is considered a universal mantra. Om is the Buddha body, Ah is the Buddha speech, and Hong is the Buddha's mind. So we recite this mantra to become one with them. You may recite it quietly, or if that is not convenient, in your mind only. At that end, or at least every 24 hours, dedicate the merit for the benefit of others. In this way, you begin to make everything part of your practice. We begin shamatha practice with a focus on a small object, you recall, and then an imaginary object, a bindu, and then a bindu inside ourselves on a hollow, transparent body, and now ourselves as a visualized yidam. So those are the sequences that we have been going through. This is a step on the way to becoming an actual Buddha. We move through the impure to the pure state of being. To support this, Padmasambhava gave the following advice to Yeshe Tsogyal. Whatever you do, like practicing wholesome activities with body, speech, and mind, making offerings, or performing elaborate rituals, it is most crucial that it be done in a state free from mental reference. Okay? So we don't focus on the visual, on the verbs, the words that we're using as a part of that. We transcend those things. In other words, do the practice without thinking about it, but focus on the direct experience itself. As you learn other and more complex yidam practices, return to this approach to learn to visualize the yidam, the consort, if any, and the complete mandala of the other yidams as appropriate. So that's it for today. But next week, we're going to look at the next level of complexity, which is the completion stage in the highest yoga tantra. So we're taking a big step into some other levels of practice next time. So in the meantime now, please abide softly and deeply in pure awareness with loving kindness, compassion for all beings, always and always. And pray for peace. Thank you very much for being here or watching online. You're welcome.